I think that Kizaru will be the main villain / antagonist of Egghead Island. Just saying, it might be time for Luffy to beat an Admiral. Kizaru's appearance is definitely an interesting twist of fate, because he hasn't been sent here as a result of Luffy. He was already on his way to the island for a quote prior operation. And before we get into the fighting and the battlings, and even the potential defeat of an Admiral, I want to know what that prior operation was. From what we hear from Sakazuki, he knew about CP0's plan to assassinate Vegapunk, so I doubt that Kizaru's appearance here is a coincidence. When I say he, to clarify, I mean Sakazuki, not necessarily Kizaru. But maybe the reason why he's coming to Egghead Island is to take custody of all of the everything. Because CP0, they're pretty good at killing and well, killing, but 3 agents probably don't have the logistical ability to recover and transport an entire island's worth of technology. So Kizaru could be on his way to either secure Egghead Island or transport all of its really cool stuff to a more secure, world government friendly location. And while he's there, I'm sure he'll also give Lucci a lift home because that crazy cat, he broke his boat. The question we all want answered though is, will Luffy fight Kizaru? And I think if the decision was up to Luffy and Luffy alone, he would say yes. I want to punch that light guy straight in the globes. Because at the end of Dressrosa, Luffy made the call that, yeah, you know what, I'm done running from admirals, which in turn meant that the Grand Fleet had to then force him to run. Meanwhile, on Wano, we got our first shot of the opposite scenario, successfully forcing a Marine Admiral to run. I mean, no, it wasn't Luffy's doing, but he was more than ready to fertilize that garden. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Fertilization makes the garden grow. So defecating on Green Bull is the very last thing that Luffy would have wanted to do, because that's exactly what Green Bull would have wanted. But I would be quite surprised if we moved away from Egghead Island without getting into a direct conflict with Kizaru, because we have a very interesting setup here. Kizaru is an important piece and a very familiar and quite strangely shaped puzzle, because he's not the only one currently on his way. Bartholomew Kuma is also assumedly bound for Egghead Island, and Sentomaru is bound to Egghead Island, meaning that we have ourselves a nice big Sabadi arc reunion happen. So this is a chance for Oda to show us a direct comparison of the Straw Hats then versus the Straw Hats now. Originally, they were completely powerless against an Admiral, but this is the end game of One Piece, so surely we can't just go ahead and replay those events. At some stage, Kizaru's got to get thwacked in the globes. Also, this video is sponsored by ZenMarket, an amazing Japanese proxy shopping service based in Osaka, Japan. ZenMarket allows you to buy from over 10,000 Japanese stores, including Amazon, Yahoo Japan, Rakuten, Pokemon centers, and most importantly for me, Japan's official One Piece store, Mugiwara, through the Toei domain. That's right, in Japan, there are literally stores just dedicated to One Piece. And the fact that they don't ship overseas has always been the bane of my existence. But ZenMarket solves all of those problems, meaning you can find and purchase One Piece items that are released early or in many cases only sold in Japan. It's a dream come true for me and a nightmare come true for my bank account. Plus, ZenMarket has recently added the online flea market Rakuma, hosted by one of the largest shopping sites in Japan, trusted and used by Japanese people daily. You can click my link in the description to shop through the Grand Line Review landing page, containing all sorts of One Piece-y goodness, with free account registration and a gift of 300 yen for new members, essentially waiving the service fee for your first item. So do that thing, but for now it's back to you, me. And with all of this, I'm taken back to the light pressure gloves, a concept introduced by Atlas, which can, quote, do more than just observe light. And by more, Atlas means punch, very much speaking Luffy's language there. But Egghead Island so far has been an exceptionally lean arc. We haven't had a lot of time to goof around and just explore the world like the good old days, which makes me think that these gloves are 100% set up to allow us to fight Kizaru. It's just too perfect. They counter his exact power, and Atlas is currently with Luffy's group. She also happens to be injured and therefore likely unable to use the gloves herself. So, solution, plonk them onto Luffy and just have him go wild. And also give Sanji some anti-light shoes while we're at it. And hey, even Kuma is a potential Kizaru counter. His fruit ability is already to reflect literally everything, even abstract feelings, so light shouldn't be an issue, especially since it's much more susceptible to reflection than any other substance already. But will Kizaru be defeated on Egghead Island? I don't know if I can see that happening. Ultimately, the odds are probably going to stack up very unfavorably against the Straw Hats, and they may need to evacuate the punks. I suppose a lot depends on exactly how many Marinos Kizaru brings with him. Again, my understanding is that he was deployed on a less combative mission than, taking on an emperor and his entire crew, but I can't help but feel like our antagonist will eventually have the upper hand here, leading to tragic consequences answers for your Kumas and your Vegapunks and maybe some others. Zoro versus Kizaru rematch incoming. You know, I would personally just say match, because from what I recall, the fight on Sabari was more like Kizaru versus Zoro's corpse. Actually, you know what? I've just realized that this commenter probably means Kaku, not Kizaru. That makes a lot more sense. Do you think that Vegapunk's theory about the fruits are true? If so, how is he copying them if it's something that comes from the desire of a person? Alright, let's dive into this topic because there is some juicy stuff. So as mentioned in the chapter review, Vegapunk's words are quite divisive here. And being honest, dissecting his speech word by word is going to be an absolute staple for One Piece theories going forward into the, well, who knows, potentially years from now. Because there's a lot of words being thrown around like desires, dreams, and dimensions. A lot of D words actually, which, well, that's quite appropriate. But I do think the language Vegapunk is using is quite epic, metaphoric, and not at all scientific. Especially the bits about the mother of the sea, the gods, and he even makes reference to sin. It's a very abrupt shift in language for someone so science-based. But I definitely don't think a lot of what he's saying here is meant to be taken literally. Especially the line, those with powers exist in different dimensions, dreamed up by someone else before them. Because dimensions is a tricky word. I just had trouble saying it, that's how tricky it is. And my interpretation of that line is that current Devil Fruit users are living out the desire that was once born in the minds of a previous person. Sort of like how you could say that a hyper-wealthy person lives in a completely different world, despite the fact that we literally live in the same world. They just have a completely different experience of that same world, hence living in a different world, but the same. And I could be wrong about that, maybe this is very literal and One Piece is entering a multiverse saga, but until proven otherwise, I'm gonna go with the more metaphorical interpretation. So while unlikely to be born from pure desire alone, that desire is still the spark that led to someone bringing that desire into reality through unknown, probably scientific means, which is basically a reflection of Eiichiro Oda himself. He creates new devil fruits for no other reason that he wants to bring new powers into being and explore their possibilities on page. Fun fact, the Gomu Gomu no Mi is an idea that spawned directly from a core desire of Eiichiro Oda himself. The desire to be lazy, that is, because he wanted to like grab things without moving. And that is legitimately how a huge chunk of One Piece was born right then and there, with a guy on the couch just not wanting to get up and get the thing. That is how One Piece started. In world though, what this hypothesis implies is that each individual devil fruit was likely created by a separate person with that particular desire, rather than say a small team of ancient sciences who engineered a laundry list of powers. So maybe everyone in the ancient kingdom was able to create their own custom devil fruit, and what we're seeing in the modern day is the result of their wills and dreams and desires. But with that in mind, seriously, whose desire was it to become a jacket? Because we need to have a serious chat with them. But then I guess the next stage of evolution would be to begin creating new devil fruits again. Vegapunk has already replicated the old ones, but now we need to innovate, to give people the freedom to pursue their own dreams and desires again. What encyclopedia does Blackbeard have? The old or the new? Ooh, this is such a great line that I overlooked the first time around, because Vegapunk implies that there are multiple editions of the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, which makes sense, all encyclopedias need updating. However, the way in which Vegapunk says it makes it sound like it's sort of the other way around, as if each subsequent edition of the encyclopedia removes information, I guess censoring it, which is why not having the Gomu Gomu no Mi in even the oldest of book things is quite the curiosity. However, this is where I need to be that guy. This is my actually moment, because this is a very rare Oda inconsistency. Vegapunk claiming that the Gomu Gomu no Mi doesn't exist in any of the books goes directly against Oda's statement in the SBS of Volume 45, where he quite clearly says that yes, the Gomu Gomu is in the encyclopedia, and not only that, it is pictured and titled. Again, this is a rare inconsistency that might seem small, and look, honestly it is, but it may hint towards the idea of the whole sun god fruit not being in mind from the very beginning, or even the middle, perhaps even a lot of the end. Who knows when this was thought up, because Luffy definitely has foreshadowed connections to the sun god, but not necessarily a literal Nika fruit. But I love the question of Blackbeard. I didn't even think of this, but he may very well not be working off the more recent editions of the encyclopedia that was read by characters like Sanji, and there may be information contained within the much older texts that Blackbeard is taking advantage of and basing his entire plan around. This may come as a surprise to some of you, and an yeah, I forgot about that to others, but one of Blackbeard's hobbies is researching history. In fact, it's one of two hobbies. His only hobby apart from drinking. So it's drinking and history. Also, if he wasn't a pirate, he would become an archaeologist. So Blackbeard and Robin have a lot more in common than they have any right to. But that's why it's very easy to see Blackbeard having dug up a more ancient Devil Fruit encyclopedia. Perhaps one that details the true abilities of the Ami Yami no Mi or another devil fruit, or even containing the method to consume multiple devil fruits. Although speaking of consuming multiple devil fruits, I think symbolically at least only having one makes sense. Because with one power, you're living the dream of that one dude who created it. And we can't live two dreams, so that's just greedy, and not at all in the spirit of either of the original dreams. I mean, if the original user wanted to create darkness earthquakes, then that's what they would have done. But this also opens up the very real idea of, hey, what happens when someone's dream is not particularly great for society? Like, say, wanting to plunge the world into darkness. Dreams and dreaming, they're often words that are used quite positively, especially in One Piece. However, there are some not so great dreams out there as well. And I guess an interesting part of this world is that we're dealing with unleashing the bad dreams as well. If Kaido wasn't awakened like people speculate, that makes him even more of a monster. Also, the way devil fruits work remind me of how devils in Chainsaw Man come to existence. So a couple of things here. Firstly, Luffy vs. Lucci is the first fight in the series featuring two confirmed awakened Zoan users. That may not end up being retrospectively true, but look, we have yet to have anything confirmed about Kaido yet. And I'm struggling to think of many others. But secondly, that Chainsaw Man comparison might be quite apt. Essentially, in that series, the power of a devil is directly correlated to the fear of what it represents. So for example, the gun devil is a major one because guns hold a high priority of fear. But with all of this talk about desires and belief, this can and has in fact been applied to devil fruits before. The finest example of which was Jinbei. As soon as he felt no fear towards Big Mom, her devil fruit lost all power over him. So maybe that's a situation where the power of soul control is so feared that that's what powers that fruit. By the way, whoever dreamt up that ability to non-consensually manipulate other people's souls, probably not a good person. But this also ties into the Nika discussion. Perhaps mythical Zoans are the strongest fruits because godlike creatures are the most revered, to the point where Luffy may have only been able to awaken his devil fruit because people around him started comparing him to a guardian deity. As always, One Piece has left us with a big ol' sack of maybes. Every answer given just creates more questions. Is the Mafia boss on the cover story one of the bosses Capone Beige killed? He looks familiar. No, well yes, he does look familiar, but no, he's not one of whatever you said. And I'm surprised by how many people don't recognize this character, but then I need to remember that not everyone obsesses over fictional pirates for a living. To be honest, even if this wasn't what I was doing for a living, I'd still be doing it. But his name is Dufeld, and he's one of the underworld emperors that we met during Sanji's wedding at Whole Cake Chateau. Specifically, he is the Lone Shark King / God of Fortune. He also tried to really sneakily steal the Tamate box, but then Stussy intervened and knocked the box down, and then big boom. So in a way, you could say that Dufeld was very much responsible for the action of toppling Whole Cake Chateau, which is traditionally credited to Luffy. I don't think it's a huge surprise to see that he was involved in MADS, because a huge chunk of the Vegapunk characters is the dependence on funds and resources. So if not the world government, then Dufeld is really the only one with some substantive funds. The biggest surprise, however, is his motivation for doing it. MADS was seemingly an organization of philanthropy, funded by Dufeld to promote peace and pacifism and probably other P words, which I guess gives us the answer as to why Vegapunk joined the group, because he's all about peace and utopias and such. But I think we can probably put together what happened from there. Due to the influence of characters like Queen and Judge and Caesar, this research became less than peaceful, especially since all three of those characters now specialize in designing weapons. Whatever happened may also tie into how Dufeld got his scar, which is notably not present on the cover story page. So this depicts a very optimistic Dufeld before his hopes and desires were probably completely and utterly crushed by the sheer dickery of the scientists he hired. But it's a really cool connection. I love that such a minor character to us can still have such deep roots within the world. And if you want to find out just how deep One Piece goes, then here's another video chock full of fictional pirate stuff.